Hi guys, it's Kristen from Femme, Cyclist, and today I'm going to teach you how to pump up a bike tire using a bike pump. There are two different kinds of basic bike pumps, a floor pump and a hand pump, and I'm going to teach you how to use both. It doesn't matter what kind of bike you have, whether it's a mountain bike like I'm using here, a road bike, a cruiser bike, your commuter bike, or some kind of hybrid. You don't have to be afraid of pumping up tires. It's a super easy fix, and I'm going to show you how it's done. Before you even get the bike pump out, the first thing you're going to do is figure out whether you have a Schrader valve or a Presta valve. This is what a Schrader valve looks like. This is what a Presta valve looks like. Why does it matter? Well, because the nozzle you use is going to be different whether you have a Schrader valve or a Presta valve. Most bike pumps will accept either valves, although some will only accept Schrader valves. If that's the case with your bike pump and you have a Presta valve on your wheel, then you need to get an adapter. These are easily found on Amazon or even at places like Walmart. The next thing you want to do is figure out what PSI your tires should be pumped up. If you're not familiar with that term, PSI, it means pounds per square inch. It's the same way we measure tire pressure in our car tires. And it's going to be a little different depending on the kind of bike you have. Your tire should have the recommended pressure printed right on the sidewall. So for instance, this tire says on the side, minimum 40, maximum 55. That means I want to pump up the tire to between 40 and 55 PSI. If you can't find the recommended PSI on the side of your tire, then here are some guidelines. For a road bike, you want to be between 80 and 100 PSI. For a mountain bike, between 25 and 40 PSI. And for hybrid bikes and cruisers, you probably want to be somewhere between 40 and 60 PSI. Again, the best way to find it is on the side of your tire, but if not, you can play around with those ranges. Okay, now we're ready to actually pump up the tire. We're going to do it first with a floor pump. A good old floor pump is probably what you already have at home. This is the easiest kind of pump to use to pump up a tire. This pump that I'm using today is a nice cheap Schwinn bike pump. It works great. You don't need a super fancy pump to pump up your tires. Step one is to figure out if your valve has a dust cap on it. If it does, remove it. Remember, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. Put the cap somewhere safe so you can put it back on later. If you have a Presta valve, the next step is to actually unscrew the valve to let air in. You want to turn the valve several rotations. Again, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. And if it's been sitting for a while, it might actually be kind of stuck. Every so often, you actually have to get a pair of needle nose pliers off to help loosen it. Once you've unscrewed, go ahead and press down once to let a little bit of air out and open the valve. The next step is to put the nozzle on the valve. Now, one important thing to note is that most floor pumps are going to have two different holes. One is for Presta valve and one is for the Schrader valve. The Presta valve is the little hole, the Schrader nozzle is the big hole. Use the right one depending on which kind of valve you have. The next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and put the nozzle on the valve. Then I want to lift up on this lever and put it at a 90-degree angle to where it is right now. Next, I want to put both my feet on the pump and use my upper body to push air into the tire. I'm going to use the gauge on top of the pump to determine how many PSI I have. I'll keep going until I've inflated it to the proper tire pressure and then stop. It's time now to go ahead and release or take the nozzle off the valve. You might hear a little air coming out. That's okay. If you have a Presta valve, re-tighten the nozzle. In this case, we want to tighten it, so we're going to turn it to the right. And if we have a dust cap, We'll put the dust cap back, and that's it. Using a floor pump is super easy. Now I'm going to teach you how to use a hand pump. Hand pumps are convenient because they're super tiny and you can fit them in a backpack to take with you on your ride. There are lots of different kinds of hand pumps, so it's not as easily taught as the floor pump. This pump is Crank Brothers, and you can see on one side here, I have a Presta valve small hole. The other side, I've got a Schrader valve big hole. And it's got a pressure gauge right here on the front. This is an easy to use little pump. This is my favorite hand pump. This is a Lezyne pump, and it too can accept either Schrader or Presta. So on one side of this, it's Schrader, and one side is Presta. I go ahead and screw the hose into the pump. So the lesson here is that you got to learn your own pump a little bit, but that you should always be paying attention to one side being a Presta side and one side being a Schrader side, and just make sure you use the right nozzle for the kind of valve that you have on your bike. So just like a floor pump, I'm going to go ahead and screw the nozzle onto the valve. And then I'm going to pump until I reach the desired PSI. Once my tire is fully inflated, remove the nozzle from the valve, and if you have a Presta valve, reclose the valve, replace the dust cap, and you're done. The most important thing to remember is not to get discouraged if you have trouble at first. Play around with it a little bit, have confidence. If you're having trouble, you might just need to remove the nozzle off the valve and try replacing it again. Every so often, you just don't get a good connection, and it's okay to keep trying until you figure it out. You will. If for whatever reason your tire is just not holding air, then that means you might need to replace the inner tube inside your tire. That's a lesson for another day. But if you need immediate help, you can always go to your local bike shop, and they'll also be happy to help you either inflate your tires or help change your inner tubes. Please go ahead and hit subscribe so you can get videos of our other YouTube tutorials in the future, as well as product reviews and things that help inspire women to be involved in the cycling community. Peace out, ladies.